Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Watkins, Family Officer with Carrington Group. Happy to have you join us today on our podcast this morning. Co-host Dr. Blair Ritchie, Executive Director, International Student Foundation, and my two partners at the Carrington Group, Jason Smith and Tyler Tallman. How you guys doing this morning?
Good to be here.
Great morning.
Episode
Full
39
house
today?
Yeah,
Something. A lot.
It's 39.
Yeah.
I think it's 39.
Well, guys, I'm really excited. We've got a great guest today, great podcast. The brilliance in this room has doubled, and don't want to spoil that for everyone, but we'll get there. But let's kick off with our leadership trivia question. We are fascinated by the stories of leaders, make a difference in people's lives. So, Blair, what's our leadership trivia question for today?
We're going to have some fun little history here, all right? So today's legendary leader was born in a state that no longer exists. Little trivia here, there was a piece of North Carolina that kind of split off before it was annexed to Tennessee, and they were their own state for a while. And this legendary leader was born there. Ran away from home as a boy after getting in trouble at school. He actually made his living for a while as a bear hunter. He got elected to the House of Representatives and became embroiled in a feud with the president. Can you imagine that happening in America? Interestingly enough, it was that same president whose life he would one day save by foiling an assassination attempt. People who think things are bad now just don't know history, and especially American history. He only spent 3 months in Texas, but will forever be a legendary part of Texas history. One last clue. He owes much of his popular fame to Walt Disney. So who is this legendary leader? I'll be back at the close of today's program with the answer.
Gave us a lot of clues today.
Yeah.
He knows we're a struggling group. Every week we struggle with this. So
when I mention history, I know I'm out. It's just like nobody knows history anymore. So that's kind of.
All right.
Oh, well, our guest today, I'm excited about Andrew Snow. Andrew has a penchant for outside-the-box thinking. He spent his college career testing and perfecting ways to buck conventional wisdom, redesigning traditional events, parties, and any rulebook he opened. He made a name for himself by making impossible innovations work. Hired by the University of Oklahoma Alumni Association, Andrew was the youngest of a fresh team brought on to reimagine the institution's aged approach to engaging its core. He moved to Dallas in 2003 to work for SMU at the beginning of an intensely ambitious capital campaign. This campaign gave him the opportunity to try, fail, and sometimes succeed at new ideas to inspire 100,000 SMU constituents to make a gift each year. Doing so required wild imagination, lead a team to execute, and the ability to convince leaders and tastemakers to accept new ideas around events, buy into new programs that can embrace thousands of volunteers, and embrace the idea that high-frequency, highly personalized solicitations would indeed achieve the desired and unprecedented growth goals of the campaign. Andrew left SMU in 2015 to learn the workings of smaller nonprofits, leading the development team of the Dallas Children's Advocacy Center. He brought organizational changes and a new paradigm to the organization that led to record-breaking revenue to the organization. Andrew's dream of starting Track 15 began years ago and became a reality after several late-night discussions with his business partner, Chris Shultz. Andrew received his MBA from Southern Methodist University and his Bachelor of Science from the University of Oklahoma. He currently serves as president of Go Oak Cliff, the treasurer of the Better Block Foundation, and is on the finance committee for Highland Park United Methodist Church. He has 2 children, ages 7 and 4, and is married to the one girl that fell and continues to fall for shenanigans, Jennifer. Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Guys? I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you.
That was a shameless Oklahoma.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know if you picked that up or not.
God, isn't it amazing the timing that Kyle is the person hosting the show today? Another Sooner.
Yeah. Funny how that works out. The universe is aligned, that's all. So, Andrew, before we dive off in all that in your bio, there's a lot there, but just want to hear your story a little bit, where you're from, a little bit about your journey, maybe one or two events or people that's helped shape you and put you on the path to where you are today.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I start sweating a lot when I talk about myself, so don't be alarmed. But I'm a product of people that have been around me my whole life. Really, I think about Track 15 right now. I have such a great team of people that all have incredible strengths. Thinking about my time at DCAC was the same thing. SMU, OU, going all the way back. I've been so fortunate to have strong people around me, and I think. I mean, honestly, talking about myself feels silly. I think that's why I sweat, because there's just so many people that have come in and out of my life. The people I think that have made the most influence on me in my career, Brad Cheeves, who's the vice president of development at SMU, and a guy named Mark Peterson, who's now the vice president of development at Wake Forest. They both invested a lot of the risk, I think, in me. When I was at SMU, they gave me the chance to be myself in a culture that was very established. It's a 100-year-old institution, and I was a kid that prefer to wear, skinny jeans and a T-shirt to work, and come up with some crazy stuff. And they allowed it to happen, and that gave me the chance to figure out that, a lot of what's going on in the nonprofit world is kind of there's just a lot of inertia for a lot of reasons, and sometimes it takes sort of somebody to come in and shake things up to get everyone to look at things different. And then the benefit of having really strong people around is, you can say, or I can say, hey, what about this crazy idea? And they'll say, yeah, that's too crazy, but what if we dial it back a few notches? And then so we dial it back a few notches, and then I say, well, I have no idea how we're actually going to do this. And then the strong people around me are like, well, that's okay. That's why we're here. We know exactly how to do this, but we never would have had the idea. So that's kind of a roundabout way. I don't know. I've been very lucky to be surrounded by really good people the whole time. If it was just me, I don't know what I'd be. Nothing.
Right.
So.
Well, it seemed like it started off early, like in your college career. And so what, I guess, sparked that to where you're redesigning these events?
You want me to talk about OU?
Oh, I mean.
So I was on an organization called Campus Activities Council, CAC, and I was the chair of College Bowl. And College Bowl at the time was kind of a, this organization put on homecoming and all the big events that were popular, but College Bowl was kind of the little dinky one. And that year, I was like, you know what, we're just going to make this thing awesome. And we ended up bringing Ben Stein. Remember Ben Stein?
Yeah.
We ended up bringing him to campus to host the finals of this deal. We ended up putting the finals actually in Lloyd Noble Center on the court. We had enough people to fill it up. We had Coach Switzer. He was on the poster doing something zany just for the publicity for the thing. So it was so fun to be able to figure out how to put those pieces together. I mean, when I said, hey, we're going to bring Ben Stein, I don't remember, it cost like many thousands of dollars to bring him in. Mm-hmm. So it was a crazy idea, but I had to figure out, like, well, who can partner with me on this to actually make this stuff possible? And so that was the first time, I think, where it was like, you know what? We made this thing happen. We actually turned this dinky event into something that everybody was interested in, and it was so fun doing that. So that kind of sparked the flame, and to want to do that in any situation. So I feel like I've been seeking that kind of thing out for the last 20-something years.
No, that's very cool. And then you got hired by the university, and so, you got that, and then coming to SMU, and these are old and very large institutions. So what kind of obstacles did you have to overcome, and like how some of the things that you had to face, and then maybe some things that you learned having that experience coming in? I know you're the youngest at OU, but then coming in SMU as the young guy and these incredibly innovative ideas. Can you talk about that experience and what that was like?
Or stupid ideas.
Well,
no. Yeah, I mean, I think I put youngest on there because from an introspective point of view, I guess it was hard. I guess that I, like I said, that spark was always in me to want to shake things up. Mm-hmm. So what I had to learn for myself is, how do I get into a situation that maybe doesn't need shaking up? Like, I want to go into any situation and shake things up, but that doesn't, most of the time the situation doesn't call for that. So personally, it was really difficult to learn how to be a part of a team. You know, these institutions are successful partly because they've been around a long time, but also they've had a long time to figure out what they do and what works. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it, you know, inertia in that case isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, if it's working, it's working. So how it personally, figuring out over time how I can sort of quench that thirst to want to shake things up, but still, you know, be respectful and work on a team and work in a culture that that doesn't need to change. That's honestly, I've been trying to figure that out for my whole career. I don't have it figured out, but I think I'm getting better at it. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to. It's not hard to answer. It's just hard to put into words. Like, you know, I was the young kid. I was a punk that had these stupid ideas, and whenever someone said, "Hey, well, let's," you know, first I found that threatening, and then later I was like, "Well, how do we? Okay, well, what would you do?" And over time, having those conversations and actually trying to pay attention to these people like Brad and Mark that, you know, have wisdom and experience and things that, you know, I didn't understand then. You know, now I've learned, hey, people, I think ultimately people want to shake things up. People want their organizations to reach the full potential. They want themselves to reach full potential. And just because they aren't doesn't mean they're doing something wrong. And so I have to remind myself of that pretty frequently now.
So what are some of the things that it's hard being innovative in some of these environments? It's hard being the innovator. So what are some of the things that you found to help you to be innovative in environments that maybe people they're just hitting their head against the wall a lot when they do that?
Well, definitely humility and experience. I mean, so experience is just luck. I mean, luckily, enough of these ideas worked and achieved whatever goal they were supposed to achieve. And frankly, the ones that failed, you know, we didn't just ignore them. I like to look back and figure out, well, what failed? Why on earth did this fail? So experience is a big part of that. And then obviously just the humility, like I mentioned. I mean, that's nobody, we hate using the word consultant in our company, in Track 15. Not to disparage any consultants, but in the nonprofit world, there's this view that consultants come in and say, hey, you're bad at this, and here's a PowerPoint for how to do it better, and see you later, you know? And so the idea of, we don't like that, right? So humility comes into play there. Right. Why are you in this position? How can we help you? Because you want to reach your full potential, and we can help you. But then in terms of innovation, I mean, it's honestly, it's a fun word to use. It's a fun word to say in a bio. It's a fun word to put on the website. But in all honesty, it's probably not the best word to use in this case, because when we meet with our clients now, and this is kind of looking back at my career, been consistent, when we tell them an idea, like I think a gentleman was asking me earlier, well, how do you do what you do? And it's like, well, honestly, we just kind of help them slow down and focus on fundraising in the case of Track 15. And we tell them things, and everything we tell them, they're like, oh yeah, that's so obvious. Of course, we should have thought of that, you know, but they didn't think of it because they didn't have time, because they're saving the kids, they're curing cancer, they're building a community for mentally ill people. You know, it's not because they're bad at it. It's not because they need an innovative idea. It's just they need help focusing, or someone to just kind of pull them aside and show them kind of what they could be doing, and let them do it and then get back to the important work that they're doing.
So is some of that, in your opinion, in the nonprofit world, is it because people, I feel like a lot of nonprofits, a lot of them are starving to death, and so they have to do everything on their own, and so you end up in this kind of stagnant environment that you're describing right now, just because you don't have the time and the resources and the people to do the things that you need to do to take it from square one to get it off the ground. Is what you're describing?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I would say just turn the podcast off and go Google Dan Pallotta TED Talk. Mm-hmm. There is this guy, we were turned on to him a few months ago, and he describes the reason why the nonprofit world is like that. Just from an economic standpoint, they have a completely different rule book that puts them in that position that you're talking about. Companies are able to spend a ton of money to scale up, and anytime a nonprofit is faced with a situation of lack of scale, they're chastised for being, irresponsible with their funds. And, I want all my funds to go to the mission. Well, guess what? The mission is carried out by hiring lots and lots of therapists, and that costs lots and lots of money. So that's our scale, that's our capacity. Yeah, but that overhead, I don't want my money going to overhead. I want it going to the kids. Well, it just economically doesn't work that way.
But the reality of it is that it seems like every company, if you look at every company structure, somehow, some way, it leads back to a nonprofit. They all have some sort of a nonprofit because there's just a simple reality of the tax piece of it. But, so I get where the stigma comes from, where folks are like, well, I donated my money, but is any of it really getting to the cause that's in play? My other question I had for you, for just young, new nonprofits in Dallas, this is a pretty tough environment. There's only so many resources to be spread out amongst people. And so I'm just curious, in working in that arena every day, what advice that you would have for somebody who's starting a new nonprofit or who has a vision for a nonprofit, and what are the top 2 or 3 things that you would tell them that you just have to do to survive as a nonprofit here in Dallas?
Well, there's $17 billion was the nonprofit income in 2018 in Dallas. So there's a market out there. So there's money to be got, but at the same time, there are 247 organizations that serve the environment, and most of those organizations have to do with animal care. There were, a subset of that, there were 167 organizations that help puppies that participated in North Texas Giving Day in 2018. 167 in North Texas that did North Texas Giving Day. So yes, the competition is there in terms of quantity. So if someone's starting a nonprofit, it's as a company, it's hard for us to take their money because, number one, they don't have any to begin with. So what we try to do is we try and kind of look around and say, hey, what other organizations are doing this? Because, if you're going to start rescuing the puppies organization, well, there's 167. So how is yours going to be different? And sometimes they're different because of the person who's wanting to start it. If the person has a lot of passion, if the person has a lot of just something that really differentiates them, then it seems that, like in the business world, well, maybe that person deserves an investment to come in and create something that competes with the 167. Now there's 168 puppy saving organizations, right? So there isn't a roadmap that's specific for every startup organization. It just depends on the people that are starting it. It depends on who they know, or their access to network. And then just like a business, it depends on their ability or their history of making things work and achieve it. So in terms of advice, I'd say, hey, call us. Let's go through your idea. Let's figure out how you can if you can find somebody else that's doing it that we can partner you with, and if not, then let's help give you some ideas on how to get started. And then once you've got kind of a critical mass of people involved and a little bit of money built up, then we can start engaging in a more formal basis. But gosh, if you want to do some good in the world, go do it. I mean, that's the advice.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, over the course of your career, how have you decided when to push harder for an idea or when to push a team harder versus taking a little bit of a step back and shrinking your initial idea? How's that balance been developed for you?
Well, it's really easy to see when someone is complacent with things, and there's a saying, you guys hear this all the time. Well, we've always done it that way, and that's kind of a very prevalent statement in nonprofits, just in general. Again, it's not always a bad thing, but it whenever we hear that or whenever we see it, we ask why. And if the answer is, you can, like I said, if it's complacency, it's not out of laziness. It's just kind of accidental complacency. It's like, well, we've always done it that way. Okay, well, why? Oh, well, I don't remember why. Okay, well, can we shake it up? Like, what could we improve? We're only, if something's plateauing, maybe there's something else that we can do to get it to go up. And so those are kind of the obvious times to really push. Getting the history of how we got to where we are is always just a helpful question to ask and can lead to changing things up. And in the same sense, when you get the history and then figure out like, oh, geez, okay, now I totally get why we're here, and I don't see how we can change this, then, pulling back a little bit is the answer there. Yeah. Again, though, I have to qualify that comes with experience. I mean, 10 years ago, if someone said, well, that's the way we do it, I'd be like, well, that's stupid. Let's do it different.
How's that working for you?
Yeah. and that never worked out for me very well. But again, like I said, being surrounded by really good people who are like, okay, little guy, thank you for your opinion. You stick around and learn from the adults, and thanks for your craziness.
So how do you stay fresh? I mean, when you talk about being out of the box, is there always the threat that you're going to find yourself back in the box? And, and so talk a little bit about personally in your journey, how you stay fresh.
I'm scared to death of, we were just talking about Instagramming, and my penchant for publicizing myself is I'm worried it's going to turn me into an old man, and the young kids are going to look at me and be like, he doesn't even know how to use Snapchat. That guy, let's not hire him. So that's a fear. And I feel like as long as that fear is there, then that I'm doing something, or the company's doing something to figure out how to stay ahead, or at least keep up with those kinds of things. But honestly, from a personal standpoint, I run every day. That is I have to have alone time to start my day. I spend a lot of time on the treadmill or on the road, and I try to use that time to be reflective of, either coming up with ideas. If we have a client that has a difficult problem, that's the best time for me to really sort of process what the problem is. I can't just sit there and process. I have to step away. I have to run. I have to get my heart rate up. I got to be doing that. So, in terms of personal just discipline, having that alone time, I think keeps me fresh. But in terms of how I learn, I wish I could say that I read all these really great books, but I don't. I listen to a couple of podcasts that keep me current in terms of what's going on in the world, and then I try and pay attention to themes. I'm listening to a podcast called The Wilderness right now. It's about the previous election, 2016 election. It's written by these speechwriters, Obama's speechwriters, and they put it out in 2018. And so something that I like to do, they they were speechwriters. They're doing a podcast. They talk a lot, and I don't know if they realize it, but they talk a lot about the poor writing in their advertisements that they do. And so I try and pick up on themes that, like, what is their logic? What kind of things can I pick up that leads them to think that? Not because I want to be a good speechwriter, but maybe there's a framework in there that they're going to help me have that I can take to a client and say, you know, I've kind of noticed that there's this theme in how these guys talk about these things, and maybe that's going to let us write a campaign brief for you in a different, more compelling way. You know, by the way, I mean, we do a lot of writing at Track 15, and a lot of it's, this nonprofit does this, and they're hosting a special event, and it's going to be the best time ever, and it's going to raise all this money. So if we're writing the same thing over and over again for our clients, you know, we need fresh ways of thinking. So if I'm listening to something by writers, then it helps me. I just like to think, like, what is it that they're doing that they're not realizing they're doing that can give us sort of a framework to maybe apply to some of these letters and bring a fresh approach. So, yeah.
Amazing
yeah,
stuff.
that's great. What does Track 15 do that is maybe a little bit different than other consultants, and what makes your company so effective that nonprofits need to hear from you?
Well, so we do fundraising services for nonprofits, and our ideal client is an executive director or development officer who's wearing 1,000 hats, all of which have to do with carrying out their mission. So they don't have time or bandwidth to think about the day-to-day activities required for successful fundraising. So if we can come in as a company that does this, we're less expensive than a full-time staff or even a full-time employee, but we're able to come in and work every day helping the clients think about the development activity that they need to be doing. That's why that's our company. In turn, what we do, sort of the residual impact, is we do get to influence how they think about themselves, and that influence can help them start to be a little bit more creative in their approach and how they serve out their mission. And that's when things really start getting fun. And not only do they get fun for their mission work, but they start getting fun for the donors too. So I think what differentiates Track 15 is that we had a client who said, we kept using the word fun, and he said, hey, fun is a terrible strategy. And here's the deal. I completely disagree. I get it. In the business world, fun is a bad strategy, but we have a totally different rule book in nonprofit world. Fun is really important. So we say in our company all the time that our job is to build trust and excitement with our clients, period. We're not coming in with a Rolodex to raise money. We're not coming in with a secret sauce to get you more money. We're coming in to help you talk about yourselves and to build the relationships with people who love what you do and believe in your vision. That requires trust between us and the client. That requires trust between the client and their donors. And the excitement is where the money is. I mean, if they're excited about what they're doing, because, by the way, client that comes into us is like this: oh man, we are hurting. We just need money. We don't have enough money. And I haven't talked to our biggest donor in 6 months, and I don't even know what to say to him because things are bad. Okay, well, guess what?
Don't say that.
Don't say that. You're wonderful, and you're a wonderful person with great expertise, and you're doing incredible work in the community, and that's exciting, and that's all your donors want to hear. And then they want to hear what your real whiz-bang vision is. I mean, my gosh, if you want to eradicate the world of cancer, like, let's go with that exciting vision to your donors and tell them how we envision doing it. You know, we're just super quick, I'm sure running out of time, but mission statements versus vision statements. All the time we'll have clients either say, like, oh, we don't want to mess with our mission statement, and we'll say, great, we don't either. We don't care about your mission statement. We care about your vision statement, because your vision statement, which you always list second for some reason on the website, that's where the excitement is. I want to know, what is the vision for your organization, because that's what your donors should be judging you by, is what are we achieving, not how. Like, that's the mission statement, but what are we doing? What's the reason that we exist? I'm going to support that. So that Track 15 is here to create trust and excitement, and in doing so, we help our clients get their donors excited and start really engaging with them more and hopefully giving more.
Where can people find out more about you and Track 15?
Track15.com.
Easy to remember.
Track15.com.
Very nice. Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
Love
you guys.
having you on. It's been
Thank
great.
y'all. Appreciate it.
All right, Dr. Ritchie, what do you got for?
Okay, guys, who is our legendary leader? You have any guesses on that one?
I think I got it.
The Disney thing makes me think like Paul Bunyan or Davy Crockett.
That's it.
King of the Wild Frontier.
That's right.
King of the Wild Frontier. Davy Crockett is
Kyle,
our
did you really know it?
legendary
Do
leader.
what?
Did you know that?
After I read it.
Oh, okay.
I was speaking over.
Oh,
damn. Covered
wow.
Is Paul Bunyan a real person? Or is that completely fictional?
That's another one. That's another
not- yeah.
podcast. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a whole
there
other
you go.
podcast.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of other ways too to find out about Track 15, and you guys are on all the social media platforms out there. So
Yes, yep.
LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram down the line. So really neat organization, and it's fun having you on the show today.
Well,
Appreciate it, guys.
and as a executive director of a nonprofit, I'm excited about having lunch.
Oh, good.
Just to let you know that.
All right. Me too. Let's do it.
Encourage all those other nonprofits out there to have lunch.
And
with
it's
you.
11:30 and everybody's hungry. So
Let's do it.
Well, folks, that's our podcast for today. On behalf of the Carrington Group and ISF, this is Kyle Watkins wishing you a good day. Remember this: if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by the Carrington Group. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. To learn more about the Carrington Group, visit their website at www.carringtonfo.com or Google Carrington Group, Dallas, Texas. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphaned youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. To learn more about ISF, visit their website at isfsite.org or Google International Student Foundation to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.